In 1980, construction workers in Jerusalem broke through the ceiling of an ancient tomb, the Talpiot neighborhood, a hillside on the southern edge of the city. The dynamite cracked the limestone, and the ground opened up beneath the machines. Below the surface, a 1st century burial cave, sealed for nearly 2,000 years. The Israeli Antiquities Authority was called immediately. Standard protocol for any underground find. Talpiot was expanding fast. New apartments for a growing city. Nobody expected to find the dead. Inside were 10 limestone ossuaries, bone boxes, and the names carved on them stopped everyone cold. The tomb held the standard layout, a central chamber with burial niches carved into the walls. The excavation team descended into cool darkness. The air smelled of undisturbed earth. Archaeologist Amos Kloner cataloged the contents: 10 ossuaries, 6 bore inscriptions. Inside each box, fragments of bone, the remains of individuals dead for 2 millennia. The bone boxes were typical of Jewish burial practice in the 1st century. The inscriptions were rough and shallow, scratched by hand, not professionally carved. Bodies were laid in the niches. After a year, the bones were collected into stone boxes. The niches are called kokim, long narrow shelves carved to receive a body laid flat. Family names were often scratched onto the surface, a label for the dead. Each inscription was photographed and recorded in the field notes. Here's where the story changes. The 6 inscriptions read like a page from the New Testament. Some ossuaries bore decorative rosettes. Others were plain. All were made from local limestone. Yeshua bar Yehoseph, Jesus son of Joseph. Maria, a Latin form of the Hebrew name, Miriam. The script was typical 1st century Aramaic, scratched quickly, not professionally carved. Maria Mene e Mara, Mary known as the Master, written in Greek rather than Aramaic. Yos, a diminutive of Joseph, the same name given to one of Jesus's brothers in the Gospel of Mark. The Maria Mene inscription stood out, written in Greek, not Aramaic, unusual for a Jewish tomb. Matthew, and Yehuda bar Yeshua, Judah, son of Jesus. Each name on its own was ordinary. Yeshua appeared on roughly 9% of male ossuaries. 6 names, all from the same tomb, all matching the family described in the Gospels. The original excavators cataloged the find and moved on. Common names, they concluded. The Gospel of Mark names 4 brothers: James, Joses, Judas, Simon. 2 of those names appeared in the tomb. The ossuaries went into storage. The report was filed. For 26 years, no one connected the dots. The ossuaries were crated and trucked to storage, filed under their catalog numbers. Then in 2006, filmmaker Simcha Jakubovici and scholar James Tabor reopened the case. The methodology debate consumed academic conferences for years. No consensus emerged. For 26 years, they sat in a warehouse, untouched, unexamined, unconnected. They retrieved the ossuaries from IAA storage and asked the question no one had formally posed. What are the mathematical odds that this specific combination of names appears in one tomb by chance? The findings were published in a best-selling book and a television documentary. The debate exploded. University of Toronto statistician Andre Feuerberger ran the numbers. He used historical records and ossuary databases to estimate how common each name was in 1st century Jerusalem. Yeshua was common. About 1 in 11 Jewish men in that period bore the name. The Ramani catalog documents over 900 ossuaries from the Jerusalem area, the largest dataset available. Yosef was common. Maria was common. But the combination of all 6 together in one family tomb. Yosef appeared on about 14%. Maria on roughly 20% of female ossuaries. Feuerberger calculated the odds at roughly 1 in 600 at minimum, but Maria Mene in its Greek form was rare, and Yos as a diminutive rather than the full Yehosef was distinctive. Less than a 1 in 600 chance this name cluster belonged to a random family. The calculation was published, peer-reviewed, and immediately controversial. The announcement triggered an international firestorm. Headlines around the world. Supporters said the statistics spoke for themselves. Critics attacked every assumption. The inscription's meaning hinged on a single letter, a tiny detail with enormous consequences. Every major news network covered the story. The Vatican issued a formal statement, but the investigation didn't stop at statistics. The team turned to DNA. Archaeological associations issued formal objections. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Bone residue still clung to the interior surfaces of some ossuaries, enough for genetic testing. Scholars who had never spoken publicly about archaeology suddenly had strong opinions. The team extracted mitochondrial DNA from 2 ossuaries, the one inscribed Yeshua Bar Yehosef, and the one inscribed Mariamine e Mara. The question was simple. Were they related? The protocol was strict, multiple extraction attempts, contamination controls at every step. Mitochondrial DNA traces the maternal line. If Yeshua and Mariamene shared a mother, the sequences would match. They didn't match. The 2 individuals had different mothers, different maternal lineages entirely, different haplogroups, different maternal ancestries. The genetic separation was clear. In a family tomb where everyone else would be blood relatives, 2 unrelated individuals suggest one thing. They were likely married. A husband and wife buried in the same family vault. The Mariamene inscription became a focal point. Was this really a reference to Mary Magdalene? Defense experts testified the patina was consistent with 2,000 years of natural accumulation. The DNA couldn't prove who they were, but it established a relationship consistent with the gospel narrative. The Acts of Philip, a 4th century text, uses the name Mariamne for a figure some scholars identify with Magdalene. Some early Christian texts describe Mary Magdalene as a close companion. The Mariamene inscription uses the same Greek form of her name, but other epigraphers read the inscription differently. Mariamem Kai, Mara, Mary, and Martha. 2 names, not one. But here's the twist. Not everyone accepted the statistics or the DNA interpretation. Amos Kloner, the original excavator, called the identification impossible. He argued the names were too common, that finding them together proved nothing. The probability depends entirely on which assumptions you make about name frequencies. The adjacent tomb has never been properly excavated, only glimpsed through a camera lens. Other statisticians recalculated using different frequency estimates. Some found the odds as low as 1 in 4. Include Mariamene as a rare name and the odds skyrocket. Treat it as common and they collapse. The Mariamene identification was challenged. Was the Greek really referring to Mary Magdalene? Other scholars read it differently. And Mashiach, Matthew. No gospel mentions a Matthew in Jesus's immediate family. And the DNA only proved they weren't mother and son. It couldn't prove they were husband and wife. The mitochondrial evidence was limited. It ruled out a maternal relationship, but could not confirm a spousal one. 46 years since the discovery. The debate is no closer to resolution. Nuclear DNA would have been far more informative. But the samples were too degraded. Mitochondrial DNA reveals only the mother's line. Paternal connections remain invisible. And there was one more complication. The original excavation recorded 10 ossuaries, but only 9 were in IAA storage. The 10th ossuary was missing, and some researchers believe they know where it went. The James ossuary, the bone box inscribed James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. The James ossuary first appeared publicly at the Royal Ontario Museum in 2002. Kloner's original sketch is still the most detailed record of what the tomb looked like before it was sealed. It surfaced publicly in 2002 through an Israeli antiquities collector named Oded Golan. It was announced as the earliest physical evidence of Jesus outside the Bible. The world took notice. Jakubowiczi's team compared the dimensions. The missing 10th ossuary and the James ossuary matched within millimeters. Chemical analysis of the surface patina showed matching mineral signatures, length, width, height, all within 2 millimeters. The match was remarkably close. The question is straightforward. The answer is not. And the evidence sits in storage. If the James ossuary came from the Talpiot tomb, the statistical calculation changes dramatically. Geochemists compared the trace element profiles in the surface patina. Adding James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus, to the cluster pushes the odds into the tens of thousands. 1 in 30,000, a number that even the harshest critics found harder to dismiss. With 7 names instead of 6, the statistical significance became far harder to dismiss. Beneath the concrete, beneath the apartments, the empty niches wait in the dark. But Golan faced a 7-year forgery trial. The Israeli Antiquities Authority claimed the inscription was faked. The prosecution argued that the second half of the inscription was added later, a modern forgery. The trial lasted 7 years, one of the longest in Israeli legal history. In 2012, Golan was acquitted. The judge ruled the prosecution failed to prove forgery. Forensic specialists examined the inscription at microscopic level. Patina filled every carved groove, but acquittal didn't mean authentic. The judge said the evidence was insufficient either way. The biological patina inside the letter grooves appeared genuinely ancient, not applied artificially. The Talpiot tomb itself is now sealed beneath an apartment building. Further excavation nearly impossible. The physical site that could resolve the debate is inaccessible. Buried under modern life, residents walk past the sealed entrance daily. Most have no idea what lies beneath their building. The scientific community remains divided. The statistics are suggestive but not conclusive. In 2010, researchers used a robotic camera to explore an adjacent tomb through a borehole. The DNA proved a relationship. The statistics suggest a pattern, but proof of identity remains out of reach. They found more ossuaries, including one with a carved symbol, some interpreted as an early Christian marker. The ossuaries remain in IAA storage, available for study, waiting for better technology. Next generation sequencing has advanced enormously since the original 2006 analysis. Whole genome ancient DNA extraction could reveal far more than mitochondrial testing alone. A single chip can now sequence billions of DNA fragments, enough to reconstruct entire genomes from bone dust. Paternal lineages, geographic ancestry, family relationships beyond the maternal line. The bone residue samples from 1980 still exist, preserved and cataloged. The technology to answer the question may already exist. What's missing is permission to try. Several research groups have expressed interest, but approval remains elusive. Jerusalem remains one of the most archaeologically sensitive cities on Earth. Every excavation permit is politically charged. Every religious artifact carries enormous weight. Jerusalem's archaeology is inseparable from its politics. Every stone carries meaning for someone. The bone boxes sit on metal shelves, labeled and cataloged, their inscriptions still legible. Excavating beneath an occupied building requires permissions that rarely come. 6 names from a first-century family tomb, a statistical improbability, a DNA result showing marriage, not kinship, and a missing 10th ossuary that may connect 2 of the most debated artifacts in biblical archaeology. The name on the box is clear: Yeshua bar Yehoseph, the most ordinary name in first-century Jerusalem. The evidence doesn't confirm, but it refuses to go away. Or the most extraordinary, the evidence sits in storage, patient, indifferent to the debate raging above it. If you found this investigation valuable, subscribe. We trace the DNA evidence behind the story's history got wrong. Every week, a new case. The names on the stone have waited 2,000 years. They can wait a little longer.